let's talk about cancel culture now. I brought to your attention a film called The Unredacted, made by Smaker. I did a podcast on it last year with the director of a New Zealand film festival called Dog Edge. And they were the only film festival in the world to show Meg's film. Meg's film was chosen out of 30,000 applicants to Sundance Film Festival, which is the premier film festival in the world. 12 films were chosen. Meg's film was one of them. It's about a terrorist rehabilitation program in Saudi Arabia. And I've seen the film. It's an astonishing film. It's both artistically, journalistically.
It's called Jihad Rehab?
Well, that was its first name. She eventually changed it to The Unredacted. And yeah, it's a beautiful film, and it is incredibly timely considering what's going on in the world. A Twitter mob attacked her with misinformation and false allegations and called her every disparaging name under the sun, including a white supremacist.
And these were people who had a motive, from what I gathered.
Well, she
was breaking the sort of monopoly of...
They were primarily started with Muslim female documentarians who hadn't got their films into Sundance.
A progressive mindset, I would guess.
One would imagine, yes.
Right, yeah.
Yes. And then essentially all the institutions caved. Sundance blacklisted it. Every other film festival in the world cancelled the film.
It's all downside.
It's
Why
all downside.
stick your neck out?
An award that she was promised was taken away from her. It was basically, at the time, before all the Twitter mob happened, it was sort of the most talked about film. It was the hot film of the festival, and it was rumoured to get all the top awards. Now Meg's film career is gone, which is tragic because she's actually a great filmmaker. But
because she can't get funding?
No one will hire her, even just for normal advertising work and that sort of thing. So, because when they type in her name, there's a controversy. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing that's happened? I call it being...
Is that a trick question?
Yes. I call it being
burnt.
You want
me to say that's a good thing?
Yeah. I call it being burnt at the digital stake. Now, it's an extreme example, and I'd probably say it's one of the worst examples of cancellation.
Yes, and it came to my attention and others in the U.S.
Right,
because it was so extreme.
You've heard about it, yeah.
Yes, because Sundance's behavior was so egregious.
Yeah. So what would you say to Sundance?
I'd say show the film.
Why?
I'd say
Why?
judge it on its merits.
But it's offensive.
Some people said it's offensive.
To some
people claimed it was offensive.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the paradigmatic case of modern canceling. Does the name Salman Rushdie ring a bell?
It does.
I am guessing your audience knows that name. This is the incident that brought me into the free speech debate in 1989. And it is, in broad outline, quite similar to the Meg Smaker case, except, of course, what was threatened was not profession, but actual life. But these were people who said that a book, which they had not read, and by the way, I would guess that most of Meg Smaker's critics had not seen the documentary, and would tell you they were proud of not having sullied themselves by seeing the documentary. It's just a guess.
You are correct on that.
Yes. So this is about purity. This is about, as you say, this is a religious exercise to burn heretics. They had not read the book, but they said it was blasphemous and deeply offensive to their religion. A fatwa was put out against Salman Rushdie. He went into hiding for 5 years. What got me involved wasn't just that. Of course, that was awful. But it was the fact that so many people in the liberal West were not willing to condemn it in forthright terms. the reaction tended to be something like, well, of course, it's not good to threaten the life of Salman Rushdie. But on the other hand, he shouldn't have written a hateful and blasphemous book. So he's getting threatened with a knife, but they're getting threatened with words. So
it's hard to decide, isn't it?
It's hard to decide.
Boy.
As Salman Rushdie himself said, he's, of course, become a great champion of free speech and free thought at great personal risk. Your audience will know that he's lost the use of an eye and almost died because of an assassination attempt. As he says, without the right to offend, freedom of speech ceases to exist. And that's absolutely right. It should be artists who are the first in line to defend not just the legal right to express themselves freely, but the cultural right. And once artists get into the business of self-policing such that they're driving out of the industry people who cause controversy and not even examining the grounds for the controversy based on what I know of the documentary, it was not, in fact, inaccurate or slanderous or objectionable or racist.
It was none of those things.
But even if it has been, artists have historically defended works like Piss Christ. Now that is very offensive. That's the point. That's what artists are supposed to be able to do. And the rest of us are supposed to be able to say, okay, well, if I object to make Smaker's film, I won't go see it. And maybe I'll suggest my friends that they not go see it. But for artists to get in the business of preemptively banning and destroying other artists turns upside down the freedoms on which artists depend. So, as Marx would have said, they are buying the noose with which to hang themselves.
Yeah, amen.
Canceling was perfected on homosexuals because once you were outed, no one would hire you. You had to leave town in many cases. People who were once extremely important people working in the State Department wound up in some town in Arkansas working as a hairdresser because that's all they could get.
Yeah. Can I just point something out there about Meg, because that's actually exactly what's happened to Meg and probably countless other people. So we all agree that what happened to Frank is shocking, yet our institutions are doing the same thing now.
Well, there's one difference, which is it was the government doing it.
Yes, but it's
not just the government, but
yeah.
it was government was leading in the early 60s. Of course, the church and cultural institutions were behind it also.
Yeah. So anyway,
and what happened to Meg Smaker is more cultural and thus in some ways harder to combat. You know, you can't force Sundance to screen a documentary it doesn't want to screen.
Yeah.